Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So this is a sermon with two beginnings. First is, for those of you who are Torah pedants, that is to say, people who enjoy the details of Torah writing and Torah scholarship, this parsha is unique among all the parshiyot in the Torah, in that every other weekly selection has a break between it and the previous Torah portion. This one does not. It flows immediately from one to the other. That's called stuma, closed, and Rashi comments on it to draw our attention to it. A flow that is unbroken from the past. Hold on to that idea. We're going to be talking about L'dor Vador as the rabbi highlighted. Second, very different way of looking at the flow from the past. My favorite cartoon ever from The New Yorker was two dogs talking to each other. And one says to the other, well, of course I'm happy. I was separated from my biological family when I was 6 weeks old. Let that sink in for a moment. It turns out that families are our sources of deepest joy and continuity and our greatest aggravation. Both. People are complicated. People living with each other are extraordinarily complicated. When my daughter was 4 years old, she came home and announced that she was planning to marry Teddy when she grew up. And I said, honey, you know, he has to want to marry you too. And she said, Daddy, what are the odds of that? People are complicated. And I think about that in terms of this week's Parsha, not just because it obviously is the culmination of the family story in the book of Genesis, and we're going to see the Torah pivot away from family and to community, which is also an important building block of Jewish life and of human life. But in this week's Parsha, we watch our father Jacob. Jacob, of all the patriarchs, is the last person to be an ancestor for the entire Jewish people. Joseph and beyond, people are ancestors of streams within the Jewish people. King David is just the ancestor, the ancestor of the house of David. But the last person to be the great-granddaddy of all of us is our father Jacob, after whose name we are called Israel after him. And he's going through blessing. I have to correct you, Kvod Harav. He is not blessing all of his children. He's blessing all of his sons. I just want to point out he did have daughters, and he did not bless them. That should not go unnoticed. You're welcome. Not going to say. The next thing I was thinking, I hope you appreciate the maturity of what I didn't just say. So as he's blessing his sons, and you remember from the stories about his sons, they were at very best a handful. He had one son who slept with some of his women. He had a son who killed a bunch of people. He had some tsuris with his sons. And in the middle of his blessing, I have a sense that he was so overwhelmed that he actually breaks off from blessing the kids in series, and he says, Lishuatcha kiviti Adonai, I await your salvation, O God. Have you ever noticed that? It interrupts the flow completely, and I wonder, did he say that with a sigh? You know, oh my God, the kids you blessed me with. Did he say that because he realized that whatever salvation he would have would be through those children? So, like it or not, he and they were stuck together? Did he say it with a sense of wonder? I can't believe that I am now the father of all of these people. My hunch is it was all three of those. That our parents were complicated, and we couldn't wait to move out. And now, God, don't we miss them? And our kids can't wait to get on with their lives. And we hope that someday they'll miss us too. But Sar Gidul Banim, it's not easy to raise a human being. It's not easy. And I think about the genius of our Torah not to make the story pretty. That it presents Jacob and his sons in all of their complex humanity. And here's what I want to offer us. That, for me, is why the Torah is still a valuable book to read. You read other religious literature, and it's all goodness all the time. And I think that's very nice, but it's not like anyone I've ever met or lived with. And it's certainly not going to help with my complicated life to read about someone who was always perfect and whoever never had children, which is why he thinks he's perfect, or whose kids were also perfect the whole time. Right? I can't learn from those people, but from our father Jacob, I can learn, because I've lived long enough to know that I think I have tried mostly to be a good father, but I'm not perfect. And my children are wonderful people, also not perfect. And it's in our not perfect that we need each other, and that we come together, and that we strengthen each other, and we keep each other going. I can learn that from Jacob. I can learn that on his deathbed, as he looks at his very complicated set of sons and says, despite all of that, aren't we something? So my blessing to all of us this weekend and moving on, don't let your imperfections blind you to the joy. Don't let the challenges blind you to the triumph. We are each of us miraculous, imperfect as we are. And it is in the struggle that we break open to each other in our truth, unable to pose as something we aspire to be. We get to know our families as they actually are. And to be able to love someone as they actually are is the closest you come to knowing what God feels like. God sees our flaws and loves us nonetheless. I think you have to be God to be able to do that consistently. But for us, it's aspirational. Can you love your own self in your totality, flaws and all? Can you love your parents who did the best they could do? Whether that was good enough or not, that's a different issue, but they tried. And can you love your children who also are trying to figure out their way in this difficult world that doesn't come with an owner's manual? And if we can do that, if we can love ourselves and each other, imperfections and all, then L'Dor Vador, then the Torah flows through us and humanity thrives. Shabbat Shalom.